I was reading recently about this CEO of a mid-sized tech company.
Oh, yeah. What happened with him?
Well, from the outside, the guy was just the absolute picture of modern optimization. I mean, he woke up at 4 a.m, plunged into an ice bath, drank some, biohacked smoothie.
Right, the whole routine.
Exactly. And he had his entire day time blocked down to 5-minute intervals. He had every productivity app on his phone. He read a book a week at triple speed, and he was absolutely crushing his quarterly targets.
Sounds like the ultimate modern success story.
It really did. But then, almost overnight, the entire facade just collapsed.
Wow. How so?
His wife filed for divorce, basically citing that he was emotionally vacant. Then his executive team staged a walkout because his management style was essentially a dictatorship masked as efficiency.
Oh, man.
Yeah, and to top it all off, he ended up hospitalized for a stress-induced ulcer. I mean, he had built this incredibly efficient, highly optimized engine, but he was driving it straight off a cliff.
It is a tragically common story, honestly.
It really is.
We see this constantly in our modern culture. We are completely captivated by the veneer of success, by the life hacks and the quick fixes.
Yeah, the overnight success promises.
Exactly. We spend all our energy optimizing the surface, while the foundational structure beneath is quietly rotting away.
And that is exactly what we are unpacking today. Welcome to today's deep dive, where we are exploring the core philosophy behind Stephen R. Covey's landmark work, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People.
It's such a foundational text.
It is. And our mission today for you, the listener, is to really cut through that modern noise. We want to unpack a timeless roadmap for profound change. And right off the bat, Covey addresses this exact CEO phenomenon. He makes a razor-sharp distinction between what he calls the personality ethic and the character ethic.
Right. And that distinction is the absolute bedrock of everything we're going to discuss today.
So break that down for us. What is the personality ethic?
Well, the personality ethic is exactly what our CEO was practicing.
Mm-hmm.
It is the belief that success is fundamentally a product of public image, of behaviors, or, skills that lubricate human interaction.
Like charm or negotiation tactics.
Yes, the power poses, the shiny time management apps. And it's not that those things are inherently bad. I mean, they have utility, but they are secondary. They are the leaves of the tree, not the roots.
Okay, let's unpack this because it feels like, 99% of the self-help and business advice we consume today is purely focused on that personality ethic.
Oh, absolutely.
It's all how to influence people in 10 seconds or the morning routine of billionaires. It's entirely focused on the superficial layers of behavior.
Precisely. And Covey argues that if you rely solely on those superficial techniques, any success you achieve will be fleeting.
Makes sense.
And your relationships will ultimately feel manipulative. What he advocates for instead is a return to the character ethic.
The character ethic.
Right. This is the understanding that true, lasting effectiveness comes from the inside out. It requires building your life on immovable principles, things like integrity, courage, justice, patience, and humility.
So you can't just fake it with a life hack.
Exactly. It demands a fundamental paradigm shift.
We hear the phrase paradigm shift thrown around in corporate meetings all the time, usually to describe like a new software rollout. But Covey is using it in a much deeper, almost philosophical sense here, isn't he?
He really is. A paradigm in this context is the lens through which you view reality. It is your internal map of the world.
Okay, a map.
Think about it this way. If you are trying to navigate through Chicago, but you are accidentally given a map of Detroit, it doesn't matter how fast you drive.
Right, you're still in the wrong city.
Exactly. It doesn't matter how positive your attitude is. You can optimize your route all you want, but you are still going to end up profoundly lost.
Wow, that's a great analogy.
The character ethic is about doing the hard, often unglamorous work of making sure you are actually holding the right map to begin with.
So, if we want to redraw our maps, where do we even begin? The framework we are exploring today outlines a distinct journey to get there, which is referred to as the Maturity Continuum.
Yes, the Maturity Continuum.
And I have to admit, when I first heard that term, it sounded a bit clinical, but it is actually a beautiful description of human development. It maps out a progression from dependence to independence and finally to interdependence.
It is a vital progression to understand.
Yeah.
Because we all begin life in a state of dependence.
Right, as babies.
Exactly.
Yep.
We rely on others for our physical survival, our emotional validation, and eventually our financial support. The paradigm of dependence is the word you.
You take care of me.
Yes. You didn't come through for me. I blame you for my circumstances. It's all externalized. So the first massive leap in personal development is moving from dependence to independence.
Which is where a lot of people think the journey ends, frankly.
They do.
The paradigm of independence is I can do it. I am responsible. I am self-reliant. And I'll be honest, society constantly glorifies this stage.
Oh, completely.
We idolize the lone wolf, the self-made billionaire, the person who doesn't need anybody else. The prevailing narrative is that absolute independence is the ultimate finish line. So why does this framework argue otherwise?
It is a fascinating cultural blind spot, isn't it?
Yeah.
We elevate independence because it is a necessary rebellion against the victimhood of dependence.
Right. You have to break free first.
But it is not the ultimate destination. While you might be fiercely strong on your own, you are inherently limited. You only have so much time, so much perspective, and so much energy.
I see.
Interdependence is the realization that your own independent capabilities can only take you so far. The paradigm of interdependence is we. We can collaborate. We can combine our talents to create something far greater than I could ever create alone.
Okay, so you were saying you can't build a massive world-changing organization or sustain a deeply fulfilling marriage or raise a family from a strictly independent lone wolf mindset.
Exactly. You cannot do it alone. Now, to be incredibly clear, independence is an absolute prerequisite. You cannot skip a step.
You can't just jump to the team part.
No, you cannot be a truly interdependent team member if you are still emotionally or financially dependent on everyone around you. You have to be a whole, secure, self-reliant person first.
Before you can effectively join forces with another whole person.
Precisely. But interdependence is the true pinnacle of effectiveness.
That makes perfect sense. So the journey requires us to master ourselves before we can ever hope to collaborate with the world.
Yes.
And that inward journey of self-mastery is what Covey calls the private victory. It's the silent internal work that nobody else sees, but that dictates everything else you do.
It's where it all begins.
And that internal work begins with the absolute bedrock of this entire philosophy. Habit 1, be proactive.
Proactivity is the foundation upon which everything else is built.
Yeah.
If you fail to internalize this habit, the other 6 are utterly impossible.
So no pressure.
Right, exactly. But we need to define what proactivity actually means in this context, because it is far deeper than just, taking initiative or being a go-getter.
Right. It's not just about volunteering to organize the office holiday party.
Not at all. Being proactive means taking absolute, unconditional responsibility for your own life. It is the deep-seated recognition that your behavior is a function of your decisions, not your conditions.
So it's the rejection of determinism.
Yes.
Determinism meaning the idea that we are just products of our environment or our genetics or our upbringing.
Exactly. The reactive mind believes that we are largely helpless victims of circumstance. Reactive people are driven by their feelings, their physical environment, and the social weather around them.
The social weather.
Yeah, so if the actual weather is gloomy, their mood is gloomy. If someone treats them unfairly, they become defensive and bitter. They build their emotional lives entirely around the behavior of others.
But a proactive person operates differently. They might still experience the gloomy weather or the toxic boss or the unfair situation, but they interject something crucial into the equation, which is a pause.
Yes, the pause.
The space between the stimulus and the response.
That space is everything. It is where human freedom exists. Proactive people recognize that while they cannot always choose what happens to them, the stimulus is city, they retain the absolute power to choose their response.
And they base that response on their carefully considered values rather than their immediate impulses or feelings.
Exactly.
Okay, let's ground this in a visual that I found incredibly helpful. It's the concept of the 2 circles. You have the circle of concern, and within it, a smaller circle of influence. I think anyone listening right now can immediately diagnose their own state of mind using this model.
It is a brilliant diagnostic tool. So the circle of concern encompasses everything you care about or worry about.
Things like what?
It includes the state of the global economy, the threat of geopolitical conflict, what your coworkers whisper about you behind your back, the traffic on your commute, the weather.
Basically everything on the news.
Pretty much. These are all valid concerns, but here is the critical defining factor. You have very little, if any, real control over them.
Right. And then, nested inside that massive circle of concern is your circle of influence.
Yes.
This circle contains only the things you can actually tangibly control or affect. So it includes your own attitude, your daily habits, the way you speak to your spouse, how you spend your free time, and the specific skills you choose to learn.
Now look at where you focus your time and emotional energy. Reactive people spend almost all their energy trapped in the circle of concern.
Obsessing over the things they cannot change.
Exactly.
We see this constantly. I mean, think about the modern phenomenon of doom scrolling.
Oh, yeah.
You lie in bed for an hour, absorbing the tragedy, the political outrage, the economic forecasts. You are deeply entrenched in the circle of concern. And what happens?
You get miserable.
Right. You become anxious, you feel entirely paralyzed, and your emotional energy is totally drained. But more importantly, you haven't actually changed a single thing about the world. You have just allowed the world to manipulate your internal state.
You are actively empowering the things outside of you to control you. And as a result, your circle of influence actually begins to shrink.
Wow, really? It shrinks.
It does.
Okay.
Because you are neglecting the things you can control, your actual power and capability diminish. You become less effective in your own life.
But if you take that exact same hour, and instead of doom scrolling, you choose to read a book on a new skill, or you sit down and plan out a difficult conversation you need to have, or honestly, you just go for a walk to clear your head. You are operating firmly in your circle of influence.
What's fascinating here is the dynamic nature of that circle. When you focus relentlessly on your circle of influence, a beautiful paradox occurs. The circle expands.
Because you're getting better at things.
Yes. Because you are taking responsibility, because you are improving your skills and your emotional regulation, you become more competent. People begin to trust you more. And suddenly you find that you actually have influence over things that used to merely be concerns.
So you essentially earn the right to influence the outer circle by mastering the inner one. It all boils down to that proactive choice to say, I am the programmer of my own life. I am not the script. I am the writer.
And that metaphor of being the programmer is the perfect bridge to the next step. Because if habit 1 is the realization that you are the programmer, habit 2 is the actual process of sitting down and writing the program.
Okay, so habit 2, begin with the end in mind.
The core philosophical principle underlying habit 2 is that all things are created twice.
Twice?
Yes. First, there's a mental creation. And second, there is a physical creation.
Okay, like constructing a building. You don't just show up to an empty lot with a hammer and start nailing 2x4s together.
You'd hope not.
Right. You spend months creating a blueprint. The blueprint is the mental creation. Only when that is perfect do you pour the concrete, which is the physical creation.
Exactly. And the danger is that if you do not intentionally, consciously create the blueprint for your own life, you are by default allowing other people or societal expectations or just sheer circumstance to write that program for you.
So you're just drifting.
Yes. And you end up climbing the ladder of success only to realize years later that it was leaning against the wrong wall.
To prevent that, this framework introduces a thought experiment. And I want you, if you're listening to this right now, to really try to visualize this, even though it is deeply uncomfortable.
It is very uncomfortable.
Imagine you are walking into a funeral parlor. You walk past the flowers, you walk down the aisle, you look into the casket, and you realize it's you. You are looking at yourself. It is your own funeral.
Heavy stuff.
Very heavy. So you take a seat in the pews and you look at the program in your hand. There are 4 speakers scheduled, one from your immediate family, one from your friends, one from your work or profession, and one from your church or community organization.
It is a profoundly sobering visualization, but it cuts through the noise of life like a laser. The critical question you must ask yourself in that moment is, what do you deeply, truly want those speakers to say about you?
Right. Not what will they say based on how you're acting right now, but what do you want them to say? What kind of husband, wife, father, or mother do you want them to describe? What kind of friend, what kind of colleague were you? When you strip away the commute, the unread emails, the mortgage payments, and just the daily grind, what is the actual legacy you want to leave behind?
Sitting in that visualization forces a radical shift in perspective.
Mm-hmm.
It forces you to define your core values with absolute clarity.
Because all the other stuff falls away.
Yes. Because when you look at your life from the perspective of its inevitable end, the things that usually consume our daily anxiety suddenly seem incredibly trivial.
It is terrifying, honestly, but it is also massively liberating because when you visualize that ultimate legacy, it forces you to reverse engineer your life.
Yes, reverse engineer is the perfect word.
If you want your kids to stand up at that funeral and say, my parent was always present, always listened to me, and made me feel safe, but your current reality is that you are working 80 hours a week and scrolling on your phone during dinner.
Right, there's a disconnect.
A huge one. You immediately recognize the catastrophic flaw in your blueprint.
And that recognition is the catalyst for change. The practical application of habit 2 is taking that realization and drafting a deeply internalized personal mission statement.
Okay, but we aren't talking about a flimsy New Year's resolution here, are we?
No, this is not a goal to lose 5 pounds. A personal mission statement is a personal constitution. It is a written standard forged from your deepest values that evaluates every single decision you make.
Like a filter for your life.
Exactly. When you have that clear end in mind, you are no longer drifting on autopilot. You are no longer just reacting to whatever crisis the world throws at you today. You have an internal compass.
Okay, so habit 1 gives us the agency. We are the programmer. Habit 2 gives us the blueprint, the mental creation. We know exactly what kind of house we want to build.
Right.
But this is where the philosophy has to meet reality, because we all have grand visions of the people we want to be. But how do we actually live that out on a random Tuesday morning when the inbox is overflowing, the kids are screaming, and the boss is demanding a report?
The daily grind.
Exactly. That gap between our vision and our daily reality is where most of us fail.
And bridging that gap requires the physical creation. It requires management. If leadership is deciding what the right things are to do, management is actually doing those things effectively. This is habit 3. Put first things first.
This is the daily, hourly, minute-by-minute discipline of managing your actions so that they align with the vision you just created. And to understand the friction of this, we have to look at how we normally manage our time.
Yes. And the framework introduces one of the most brilliant diagnostics for human behavior here, which is the time management matrix.
So how does this matrix work?
The matrix categorizes every single activity in our lives based on 2 distinct metrics: urgency and importance.
Okay.
Urgency means it requires immediate attention. It's now. A ringing phone is urgent. A looming deadline is urgent.
And importance.
Importance, on the other hand, has to do with results. If something is important, it contributes to your overarching mission, your values, your high priority goals.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because when you cross-reference those 2 metrics, you get 4 quadrants.
Right.
Quadrant 3 is both urgent and important. Quadrant 2 is important, but not urgent. Quadrant 3 is urgent, but not important. And quadrant 4 is neither urgent nor important.
So to understand why we struggle to execute our life's blueprint, we have to look at where we spend our time in this matrix. Most people spend the vast majority of their lives trapped in quadrant 1, the urgent and important.
The realm of crises.
Exactly. These are the pressing problems, the project deadlines, the crying baby, the server crashing at work. These things genuinely demand your immediate attention, and they are important.
But there is a psychological trap here, isn't there? Because being in quadrant actually feels pretty good sometimes.
It is highly addictive. Operating in quadrant, it gives you a rush of adrenaline. You feel like a hero putting out fires all day.
You feel productive.
You feel busy. And in our culture, we equate busyness with importance. But the problem is, if you live your entire life in quadrant 9, it consumes you. It leads directly to stress, burnout, and just constant crisis management.
And the tragedy is, when we are so beaten down and exhausted by the relentless demands of quadrant 9, where do we go to escape? We don't have the energy to do anything productive, so we flee to quadrant 3.
The not urgent and not important.
Yes. The realm of total numbing. This is mindlessly scrolling social media for 3 hours. This is binge watching a television show you don't even like just to keep your brain turned off.
We all do it.
We do. We essentially ping pong back and forth between the high stress adrenaline of quadrant 5 and the mindless escapism of quadrant 3.
And that oscillation is the perfect recipe for a life of high stress and profound underachievement. The secret of highly effective people is that they actively starve quadrants 3 and 4, and they shrink quadrant 1.
Shrink it how?
They do this by choosing to live in quadrant 2.
Quadrant 2, important, but not urgent. This is the magic quadrant.
It really is. It is the heart of effective personal management. These are the activities that we all logically know we need to do, but we rarely get around to doing them because they aren't screaming in our faces.
Right. Nobody is calling you at 3 a.m. demanding that you go to the gym.
Exactly.
Nobody is setting a calendar invite forcing you to sit down and write your personal mission statement or to spend uninterrupted quality time with your spouse. It is never urgent.
Precisely. Activities like relationship building, long-term planning, preventative maintenance, physical exercise, and deep, focused learning, all of these reside in quadrant 2.
But they lack that immediate push.
Yeah, they are vital to your long-term success, but because they lack urgency, they require you to be proactive to actually execute them. You have to actively choose to do them.
But wait, I want to push back on this because this is where the rubber meets the road for most people.
Okay, go ahead.
It sounds wonderful to say, hey, focus on quadrant 2 long-term planning. But if my boss is breathing down my neck for a report that was due yesterday, I can't just look at him and say, sorry, I'm currently practicing quadrant 2 relationship building.
Right. You can't do that.
The quadrant I fires are real, and if I ignore them, I get fired. How do you practically make this shift?
It is a very real struggle, and you are absolutely right. You cannot ignore genuine quadrant crises. But what you have to realize is the causal relationship between the quadrants.
What do you mean?
Well, why is that report suddenly a massive crisis today? Usually it's because there's a lack of planning and preparation last week.
I see.
If you force yourself against the pressure of the moment to carve out even a small amount of time for quadrant 2 activities, planning your week in advance, maintaining your health, communicating clearly with your boss before a deadline looms, you actually prevent many of the quadrant crises from ever happening.
Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah, if you spend time doing preventative maintenance on your car in quadrant 2, your engine doesn't spontaneously blow out on the highway in quadrant 1. You shrink the crises by investing in the prevention.
That requires immense discipline, though. It requires the courage to occasionally say no to the urgent things that feel important in order to say yes to the quiet, long-term things that actually matter.
It does.
And if you can master that, if you can be proactive, define your ultimate mission, and ruthlessly execute in quadrant 2, you have achieved the private victory.
Mm-hmm.
You have fundamentally transformed from a dependent, reactive person into a truly independent, capable human being.
But as we established at the very beginning of our conversation, independence is not the final destination.
Right. Because now you are a whole, secure person, and only now are you ready to engage with the world on a much higher, more complex level. We are crossing the threshold from self-mastery into interpersonal mastery. This is the public victory.
Yes, the public victory.
And the foundation of this public victory is habit 4. Think win-win.
Win-win is a term that has been so diluted by corporate speak that we often misunderstand it. We think it's just a negotiation tactic.
Yeah, like haggling.
Right, a way to haggle over the price of a car or a vendor contract so everyone feels okay. But Covey insists it is much deeper than a tactic. It is a fundamental philosophy of human interaction. It is a paradigm of the heart and mind that constantly seeks mutual benefit in all human interactions.
And it is rooted in what the framework calls an abundance mentality, which is incredibly difficult for most of us because we are so heavily conditioned by our society to view life through the lens of a scarcity mentality.
Very true.
We are taught from a very young age that life is a zero-sum game.
We are deeply programmed that way.
Think about the structures we grow up in. In school, you are often graded on a curve. For you to get an A, someone else mathematically has to get a C. In sports, the only way my team can experience the joy of winning is if your team experiences the agony of losing. We absorb this belief that the pie of success or wealth or recognition is finite. And if you get a big slice, that means there is inherently less pie left for me.
And that scarcity mentality is pervasive. And it is highly destructive to relationships. If you operate from a paradigm of scarcity, you naturally default to a win-lose mentality in your interactions.
You get defensive.
Yes, you become competitive, protective, and suspicious. Thinking win-win, on the other hand, requires a deep-seated, secure belief that there is plenty out there for everyone. It is the belief that success is not achieved at the expense or exclusion of the success of others. It's not your way or my way, it's a better way.
Okay, I have to play devil's advocate here because this sounds a bit utopian.
Sure.
In theory, an abundance mentality is beautiful, but in practice, what if you are out in the real world trying to build this collaborative win-win relationship and the person across the table from you is a total shark?
That happens.
Right. They are deeply entrenched in a win-lose mindset. They actively want you to lose so they can dominate. How can you possibly find a win-win with someone whose stated goal is to crush you?
It is a critical question. And it is a scenario that happens every day in business and in life. And Covey addresses this reality directly. He doesn't advocate for being a martyr. If you're dealing with a shark and a genuine, mutually beneficial win-win solution cannot be found, there is a most mature, most powerful fallback position. It is called win-win or no deal.
No deal.
Yes. No deal means that if we cannot find a solution that truly benefits both of us, we simply agree to disagree amicably. We decide not to do business together. We decide not to force a compromise that leaves one of us feeling cheated or resentful.
So you completely take the pressure off the table.
Exactly. By having no deal as a legitimate, acceptable option in your mind, you are liberated. You don't have to manipulate or play games to protect yourself, and you don't have to roll over and accept a loss just to keep the peace.
That's amazing.
You preserve the relationship for the future because you walk away before resentment can build. But here's the key. You can only walk away. You can only choose no deal if you are truly independent.
Because if you're dependent, you're trapped.
Exactly. If you are desperate, if you are dependent on that deal for your survival or your ego, you will be forced into a win-lose or a lose-win situation.
That right there connects the entire framework. You have to achieve the private victory first. You have to be secure enough in your own foundation to have the courage to walk away. That is incredibly powerful.
It really is.
And once you have established that win-win motive, you are ready for the execution of it. You are ready for what is arguably the most difficult but most transformative habit in the entire philosophy. Habit 5. Seek first to understand, then to be understood.
It is transformative because it tackles the absolute core of human communication. The principle is simple to state, but incredibly difficult to practice. You must diagnose before you prescribe.
Right. You wouldn't trust a doctor who just walks into the room, looks at you, and hands you a prescription for glasses without ever testing your eyes.
You'd think they were a quack.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yet we do this exact thing constantly in our interpersonal relationships.
We do. We prescribe solutions long before we understand the problem.
Mm.
And the reason we do this is because most of us do not know how to listen. The framework identifies our default mode of listening as autobiographical listening. We listen merely with the intent to reply.
Oh, this hits close to home. You are talking to me about a problem you're having, and I am not really hearing you. I'm just waiting for you to take a breath so I can jump in.
Yep.
And worse, I am actively filtering everything you say through my own life experiences. You say, I'm so exhausted with this project, and before you can even explain why, I jump in and say, oh, you think you're tired. Let me tell you about the week I just had.
It's so common.
I just completely hijack your narrative and make it about me.
Precisely. You are projecting your own autobiography onto their situation. You are evaluating, probing, advising, or interpreting their words based entirely on your own paradigm.
So you aren't really hearing them at all.
You aren't understanding them. You are understanding yourself through them. This shuts down communication instantly because the other person feels unheard and invalidated. Covey urges us to completely abandon autobiographical listening and practice what he calls empathic listening.
Empathic listening. But how do you actually do that in the heat of the moment, especially if the other person is upset or maybe even actively insulting you? How do you listen empathically when your own defenses are screaming at you to fight back?
That is the ultimate test of character. Empathic listening means listening not just with your ears, but with your eyes and your heart. It means actively working to get inside the other person's frame of reference.
That sounds hard.
It is. You are not listening to agree with them. Let me repeat that because it's crucial. Empathic listening does not mean you agree. It means you fully, deeply grasp their emotional and intellectual reality. You are reflecting back not just the words they are saying, but the underlying feelings they are experiencing.
It takes a monumental amount of emotional energy. You have to willingly put your own ego, your own need to be right, on pause. You have to make yourself entirely vulnerable to their perspective.
It is exhausting and it is scary. But if we connect this to the bigger picture, the payoff is astronomical. Think about how rare it is in this modern world to feel truly deeply understood by another human being.
It's very rare.
It is the equivalent of giving someone psychological air. When a person is drowning, they will fight you in a panic.
Yeah.
But when you give them air, they calm down.
Wow.
When you offer someone genuine empathy, their emotional defenses drop. They stop being combative. They feel validated as a human being.
And only then, once they feel completely understood, are they actually open to hearing your perspective?
Exactly. It's not a negotiation trick. If you are just using empathy as a manipulative technique to soften them up so you can win the argument, they will smell the insincerity a mile away, and the walls will go up higher than ever. It has to be rooted in a genuine character-based desire to understand.
So if you have done the work, if you have two independent people who are both committed to finding a win-win solution and who are both practicing deeply empathic listening, what happens next?
What happens next is section 4 of the framework, which is the absolute pinnacle of human effectiveness. Habit 6, Synergize.
Synergize. This is where all the previous habits combine and explode into something entirely new. The core concept here is that the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. Mathematically, in synergy, 1 + 1 does not equal 2. It equals 3, or 10, or 100.
Synergy is the essence of principle-centered leadership. It is the realization that the relationship between the parts is a functioning, powerful part in and of itself.
I try to picture this physically to make it concrete. I think about it like baking bread.
Okay, I like that.
If you take flour, water, and yeast and just put them next to each other on a kitchen counter, you just have independent ingredients. Even if you lightly mix them together, you just get a gross, wet paste.
Right.
But if you combine those ingredients and then apply the intense friction of kneading and the extreme heat of an oven, you get bread. You get a completely new, complex substance that did not exist before. The flour, the yeast, the water, and the heat synergized.
That is a brilliant analogy because the elements of friction and heat are precisely what make synergy work in human relationships. Synergy requires genuinely valuing differences, not just tolerating them, not just putting up with them politely, actively valuing them.
Why is that so important?
Because if two people agree on everything, one of them is unnecessary. Highly effective people do not want a room full of yes men who just parrot their own ideas back to them. They seek out people who see the world differently.
Because that friction of different viewpoints is the kneading and the heat.
Precisely. If you are operating from a reactive paradigm, differing opinions are a threat. They lead to arguments and defensiveness. But if you are armed with empathic listening and a win-win motive, differing opinions are the catalyst for discovery.
So you don't compromise.
No, you don't settle for your idea, and you don't settle for my idea. You use the friction to synthesize a third alternative, a solution that is vastly superior to what either of us could have come up with on our own. That is the magic of synergy. That is what true interdependence looks like.
It is a beautiful, almost transcendent vision of what human collaboration can be. But, well, let's be real for a second. Operating at this level, living your life in quadrant 2, constantly seeking win-win in a competitive world, continually putting your ego aside to listen deeply, actively leaning into the friction of differing opinions, it is incredibly taxing.
It's very hard work.
It takes a massive toll on your physical and emotional reserves. You can build this incredible internal and external machinery of effectiveness, but every engine needs fuel, and every engine needs maintenance. Otherwise, it burns out. Which brings us to the final piece of the puzzle.
Habit 7, sharpen the saw. This is the habit that encircles and sustains all the other habits. It is the engine of continuous personal renewal. Without habit 7, your capacity to practice the first 6 habits will inevitably degrade and eventually fail entirely.
To illustrate this, think of a modern scenario that I think we are all painfully familiar with. Imagine you are trying to navigate a complex, unfamiliar city using the GPS on your smartphone. You have multiple apps open, you're streaming music, your brightness is all the way up, and you are making great progress.
I can picture it.
But then you look up and realize your phone battery is at 1%. A friend in the passenger seat says, hey, why don't we pull over for 10 minutes and plug the phone into the charger? Or at least close out some of these background apps so it doesn't die. And you grip the steering wheel and shout, I don't have time to stop and charge the phone. I'm too busy navigating.
It highlights the absolute absurdity of how we treat our own lives.
So what does this all mean? It means we are the smartphone running on 1% battery, refusing to plug in. We do this to ourselves constantly.
Yes, we do.
We claim we are too busy grinding at work to get a full 8 hours of sleep. We claim we are too busy providing for our family to sit down and eat a nutritious meal. We are too busy executing tasks to take the time to learn a new skill. We are running our lives on a critically depleted battery, utterly convinced that sheer effort and willpower will somehow make up for a lack of foundational maintenance.
Which is the very definition of a false economy. It doesn't save you time. It just makes your work infinitely harder, slower, and less effective. Habit 7 is the proactive, quadrant 2 commitment to regularly, intentionally taking time to renew the greatest asset you will ever possess, yourself.
And to do this effectively, the framework breaks this renewal down into 4 critical dimensions. Let's go through them because this is the maintenance schedule for a highly effective life. Dimension 1, physical.
This is caring for your physical machine. It means eating foods that provide sustained energy, engaging in consistent cardiovascular and strength-building exercise, and ensuring you get adequate restorative rest.
Classic quadrant 2 stuff.
Exactly. This is pure quadrant 2 activity. It's not urgently screaming at you today. You can skip the gym today and you won't die. But if you neglect this dimension long enough, it inevitably becomes a massive quadrant crisis in the form of severe illness, hospitalization, or complete physical burnout.
Dimension 2, mental.
This is the continuous expansion of your mind. Formal education is just the beginning. Mental renewal means reading deeply and broadly, exposing yourself to great literature and challenging ideas.
Not just social media.
Right. It means writing to clarify your thoughts. And crucially, in our modern era, it means ruthlessly limiting your intake of mindless consumption. It's actively protecting your brain from the algorithmic junk food of the digital age and intentionally feeding it high-quality information.
Dimension 3, spiritual.
This dimension is deeply personal. It isn't necessarily about organized religion, though it certainly can be for many people. It is fundamentally about connecting to your core values, your center, and your inner peace.
Like meditating or walking in the woods.
Yes. It's the time spent meditating, walking silently in nature, immersing yourself in great art or music, or revisiting that personal mission statement we talked about in Habit 2. It is the act of renewing your commitment to the principles that govern your life.
And finally, dimension 4, social and emotional.
Unlike the first 3 dimensions, which you largely practice in solitude, this dimension is about how you relate to others and the world around you. It is the active practice of deepening meaningful relationships.
Putting the other habits to work.
Exactly. It is choosing to practice empathic listening with your spouse or your child. It is serving your community without expectation of return. It is continually making deposits into the emotional bank accounts of the people you interact with.
And when you are consistently, proactively sharpening the saw across all 4 of these dimensions simultaneously, what is the ultimate result?
You create what Covey describes as an upward spiral of growth. You learn, you commit, you do. And because you are renewing yourself, your capacity increases. So you learn more, you commit on a deeper level, and you do better.
It builds on itself.
Yes. It is a continuous lifelong practice. The 7 Habits is not a book you read once, highlight a few quotes, nod along to, and put on a dusty shelf. It is a comprehensive operating system for human life. It is the challenging, unrelenting, but profoundly rewarding work of building a life of undeniable character, deep purpose, and lasting impact.
What an incredible journey this has been today. From recognizing that we need to abandon the superficial life hacks and undergo a massive paradigm shift, to winning the private victory over our own reactive nature by being proactive, defining our ultimate end, and ruthlessly managing our time in quadrant 2.
That's a lot to take in.
It is. To stepping out into the world to achieve the public victory of synergy, fueled by an abundance mentality and a commitment to empathic listening. As you're listening to this, you likely came to this deep dive wanting a way to cut through the paralyzing information overload of modern life. And what we've unpacked here isn't just a list of neat productivity tips. It is a fundamental bedrock architecture for how to live a meaningful life.
This raises an important question, though. A speculation that builds on everything we've just discussed, but pushes it directly into the reality we are all facing right now.
Ooh, I like where this is going. What's the question?
If the ultimate goal of human effectiveness is interdependence, as we discussed in Habit 6, the achievement of synergy, and if we know that synergy absolutely requires deep empathic listening and genuinely valuing the messy friction of diverse human viewpoints,
Right.
how does our rapidly increasing reliance on artificial intelligence affect our ability to achieve this?
Wow. That is a heavy thought.
Think about carefully. We are increasingly working in isolated remote work silos, and we are rapidly outsourcing our cognitive friction to AI. We ask it to solve our problems, brainstorm our ideas, and even write our emails to our colleagues.
We do.
But an AI, by its very design, does not offer human friction. It is a machine programmed to give you exactly the answer you want, as efficiently and politely as possible. It is designed to cater directly to your existing paradigm.
It is the ultimate yes man. It doesn't challenge your worldview, and it certainly doesn't have an emotional reality for us to practice empathic listening on. You don't have to put your ego aside to talk to an algorithm.
Exactly. So the provocative question we have to ask ourselves is this. If we continue to remove the messy, frustrating, but ultimately beautiful friction of human interaction from our daily lives, and we replace it with seamless algorithmic convenience, are we fundamentally dulling our ability to truly synergize?
That is a terrifying thought.
As we rely more and more on the machine to think for us, do we slowly lose the muscular capacity to achieve public victory?
That is something that will definitely stick with me. Will true effectiveness in the future actually require us to intentionally rebel against convenience, to actively seek out human friction?
Right.
Step away from the perfect algorithm, just so we can argue, empathize, struggle, and create something real together with another flawed human being. It brings us right back to where we started with that CEO. We can optimize and paint our lives with all the AI efficiency tools in the world, But if we lose our foundational ability to connect and synergize with other human beings, what kind of house are we really living in? Something for you to mull over as you go about your day. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Keep sharpening that saw, and we will see you next time.